Thank you everyone for joining and welcome. My name is Lake and I am the Health and Wellness Coordinator here at NDSS. Thank you for joining our webinar today, From Overwhelmed to Empowered, Thriving While You Care. Whether you're a parent, sibling, professional, friend, your role as a caregiver matters deeply, and we're excited to have you with us today. This is the fourth webinar in our caregiver webinar series happening throughout the month of October. Be sure to check out our website for additional webinar offerings in this series. You will be able to find the link to that in the chat. Today, we are going to explore the emotional and psychological aspects of caregiving and provide practical tools to help caregivers thrive. Participants will learn to recognize early warning signs of burnout, develop effective self-care practices, and apply stress reduction techniques designed specifically for the caregiving journey. But before we dive into today's content, I'd like to go over just a few housekeeping things today. So if you experience any technical issues during the webinar, please use the chat function to notify our team, and we will try to assist you promptly. Our presenter is going to answer questions at the end of the webinar, so we encourage you to submit questions through the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen. And we'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible during the designated Q&A time, but if we are not able to answer your question, we encourage you to email us at health@ndss.org, and this will also, you can also find this email in the chat. Lastly, the webinar is being recorded and will be shared on the NDSS YouTube channel and NDSS website within a few days. You will receive an email with the link within 1 week and links to some of the resources we talk about in today's presentation. Thank you for your attention, and we're going to go ahead and get started. NDSS's mission is to create a world where individuals with Down syndrome thrive. NDSS does this by driving policy change, providing resources, engaging with local communities, and shifting public perceptions. Our work is achieved through 4 key pillars: resources and support, research, advocacy and policy, and community engagement. I mentioned earlier that I am the Health and Wellness Coordinator, and the Health and Wellness team works to promote improved health and well-being for all individuals with Down syndrome. We do this through informative health and wellness resources like this webinar and also our web pages and downloadable guides. We work with the policy and advocacy team for health-related advocacy. Some of the resources I wanted to highlight today are our 3-2-1-GO program, which encourage healthy living and physical activity, balanced nutrition, and emotional wellness. We have many guidebooks, but just a couple to highlight: our Aging and Down Syndrome guidebook and our Caregiving and Down Syndrome guidebook. We also have a health and wellness specific newsletter. If you want to stay up to date about upcoming webinars such as this one, our new web pages, and updated resources, I would encourage you to sign up for that newsletter, and you should be able to find the newsletter sign up link in the chat. I am very excited to turn it over to today's presenter, Shatanese Reese, and I will now turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lake. I'm excited to be here. Let me just make sure that I'm able to share, which it says that I can. So here we are. And just want to make sure, oops, it says my screen sharing is paused. Let's try that one more time. It always, no matter how many times you practice it, right? And it still says that I'm on pause. Let me try one final time. In the meantime, yeah, I feel like we should have some music playing in the background. Let's see. Lake, are you still not seeing? Oh, good. Nope, no worries. Let me try something different on my end. In the meantime, I invite folks to come on up to the front of the room. We have lots of great snacks here. And let's see. How about that, Lake?
You're good to go.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Lake. I'm excited to be here. Happy National Down Syndrome Awareness Month for everyone. My name is Shatanese Reese, for those who are not familiar with who I am. I've been in the human resources field for a couple of decades, and I'm a certified emotional intelligence coach. And what that means is I like to help people understand what causes them to do what they do, why they do what they do, and how that shows up at work and also in personal relationships. I enjoy facilitating. So, what I'm doing today is filling my cup, and I'm also an author. So if you go out to Amazon or other places that sell books and Google my name, you'll find a couple of books out there. One book in particular was co-written with myself and my youngest daughter. And it's titled The Adventures of Nina Sophia, and it's specifically about Josiah, my youngest, who has Down syndrome. And this is a great opportunity to show you this. Show you Josiah. Goodness. So we got to be in New York earlier this year, September to be exact, for the New York Buddy Walk and for Josiah to see himself in Times Square. Of these pictures, the one that I really appreciate is the one where he's with the superheroes and he has his fist thrust in the air as if, like, yeah, he is controlling all the things. And so that is my bud. And I just wanted to share a small clip of him. Yes, he was so excited to see his picture there on the Jumbotrons in Times Square. And seeing Times Square through Josiah's eyes was phenomenal. So, again, thank you, National Down Syndrome Society, for all your efforts all year long, and especially in that's really special event. It was cool to cheer on other families as well. Let's thank you. So, today's focus, as Blake stated, we're going to talk about caregiver burnout and its impact. And we want to be able to identify some common signs in terms of emotional and what our body does when we are stressed as caregivers, and what those factors may be, what the stressors are in our everyday life. Additionally, we want to distinguish between healthy and chronic stress, because the reality is that some stress is okay. And we'll talk about some emotional and psychological impacts, as well as some specific tools for wellness and resilience, and then make sure we touch on some community support. As Lick stated, if you have questions throughout today's time together, please drop those in the chat and we will be able to, or use the Q&A feature, excuse me, use the Q&A feature and we'll be able to respond to those near the end. All right, with that, let's go ahead. What exactly is caregiver burnout? It is a state of psychological, excuse me, it is psychological, but also physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion that is as a result of prolonged caregiving stress. And caregiver burnout is not it's not a bad thing. It's simply an indication of how deeply we care for those in our lives, and especially those our loved ones with Down syndrome. Caregiver burnout is more than just simply feeling tired. It truly affects your health, your relationships, and how well you are able to actually give care to others. Specific to Down syndrome caregivers, long-term responsibilities, because we are there from the beginning, all through life. And so with each milestone, each stage of life will have varying experiences as it pertains to being a caregiver. Even though Josiah is 10 right now, I'm already thinking about what 18-year-old Josiah, 28-year-old, 38, so on and so forth. I can remember last year when I attended the Adult Summit sponsored by the National Down Syndrome Society. And it was really just an amazing experience because I hadn't thought about Josiah as an adult, and hearing what the adults experience and things that I need to be thinking about as a caregiver, first and foremost, it was eye opening. And secondly, instant stress, because I thought, oh my goodness, I have to think about Josiah's financial planning abilities. I have to think about Josiah and being able to care for himself. Our hope is that Josiah will live a very independent life, and we're already thinking about maybe having a tiny house in the back of ours. So at least Josiah has some independence, but we're close by. And I know everyone on this webinar may have someone at a different stage, and also that individual has varying levels of needs. And so that contributes to how we are feeling as caregivers. So there are absolutely unique challenges as it pertains to independence. And you and your family, you get to define what independence looks like, what it sounds like, feels like, because some of our loved ones may want to live in a group home. Others may want to live with a sibling. Others may make it adamant or, determined to live on their own. And I remember at that same conference in California, there was a panel for siblings. And so, as a caregiver, not only are we thinking about our loved one, but we also have to think about the impact on others, especially siblings, as pertains to living in our familial situation. So that is exactly how I'm defining caregiver burnout for today's discussion. The toll of caregiving stress can come in many forms. And I would also venture to say that there are stages and waves of the stress. You may experience decreased patience and energy for just daily tasks. You may experience some strain on relationships, not just with your loved one with Down syndrome, but others. Maybe they don't fully understand or appreciate what you're experiencing. They don't know the heavy toll that it may take on you just thinking about your loved one as an adult. And especially in light of what we're experiencing, in at the Capitol and under administration, that adds an additional layer of stress in terms of how we are navigating life and trying to show up as our best selves. There's a higher risk of stress, anxiety, or depression. And we may experience times when we can't be consistent in our care that we're offering. Lastly, I want to point out that there certainly is a cycle where both the caregiver and the loved one can feel the impact of our stress. And again, it's not to, place blame. This topic is to increase awareness. Caregiver well-being directly shapes the well-being of loved ones. And as I think about the statement at the bottom of the slide, what comes to my mind is the direction that we often receive when we are on flights. And if you've been on a flight recently, you probably have heard in the event of an emergency, if something were to happen and the masks come down from the ceiling, our responsibility is to put them on ourselves first. Our internal inkling is to try to care for those who are next to us and try to make sure that they're taken care of. But the reality is, if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't offer any care to anyone else. So we'll talk a lot about that as we continue. I want us to spend some time on recognizing burnout. Everyone who is on the webinar now, I'd love for you just to really be in tune with your body in this moment. How are you feeling? How is your head? How are your shoulders? How is your jaw? How are your back muscles? Where do you actually carry stress in your body? You may feel constant fatigue even after you've rested for an ample amount of time, and that may vary for each person. You may notice, or others may point out that you are irritable. There may be mood swings, or you may just feel numb, like you're not feeling anything in this moment. There may be some difficulty in concentrating or even making decisions. There may even be simple decisions. I know for me, something that I struggle with regularly is what are we going to have for dinner? Like I detest that question. And oftentimes I'm like, whatever you see in the refrigerator, whether that's cereal or peanut butter and jelly, knock yourselves out. But we know that we can't always respond in that way. You may experience a loss of joy and motivation. and just not really looking forward to anything. Additionally, you may have those headaches. There may be some poor sleep patterns, or there may be stomach issues. These are all particular signs for burnout. And the hazard is if you're not paying attention to the signs, you can become totally depleted and without even any awareness. So I'd love to know, feel free to drop in the chat or just to think about it. Which of these signs have you noticed in yourself recently? Here in Georgia, our children are out for fall break. I actually feel as if they're never in school, but that's a whole nother conversation. And as a result of being out on fall break, we're not on regular schedules. And so can't tell you the number of times this week, either Josiah has decided to come in and find a comfy spot with mom or dad, or Josiah is up later. And of course, that certainly impacts my ability to function. And so this entire week, my schedule has been thrown off. As a caregiver, we may be experiencing these things on a regular basis. And so I'm encouraging you just to pause right now and really take stock of how you're feeling. And for the next 2 to 3 weeks, I'd love for you to keep track of any of these warning signs. We have access to vehicles, and oftentimes our cars will tell us when something's not right. There's a check engine light on, or some type of hazard light that comes on. Our bodies do the exact same thing. But we can be so busy with going that we are desensitized to what our body may be telling us. So I'm encouraging you to pause for a moment and just take stock of how you're feeling. So it's time for a poll. You'll see an option pop up here in just a moment, and I just want to read through what the options are. So, which of these stressors feels most familiar to you right now? Limited respite or support options, balancing caregiving with work and family, financial strain or lack of resources, emotional toll of long-term caregiving, or pressure to do it all without help. And so Lake will just give a couple of moments for folks to respond to that question. I'm sure there are people that are thinking, why can't I select all of them? I would say maybe 20 more seconds, Lake. How are we doing with the responses coming in?
Yeah, we have about 46 responses, so I'll close it soon. I just want to get your last couple responses in.
Thank you, Lake.
Okay, that kind of slowed down, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll.
Okay, drum roll. All right, so it looks as if balancing caregiving with work and family. Oh no, it came in second. The top one is the emotional toll of long-term giving at 35%. And looking at the third would have been pressure to do it all without help. So again, number one, emotional toll of long-term caregiving is a risk factor and a stressor. Second, by balancing caregiving with work and family. Thank you all for voting. I want to give everyone an opportunity to look at those responses. And one takeaway from that poll is you're not alone in how you are feeling. So even though we had some really solid first and second votes, there were comments in all of them, votes in all of them. So let's talk about a couple of options with dealing with some of these risk factors and stressors. Before we go into tips, I want to really point out the difference between healthy stress and chronic stress. Healthy stress means there's a little bit of a stressor, but it motivates you to take action. It is causing you to like get out there and do something. So for example, one example of a healthy stressor could be an upcoming doctor's appointment that needs to be made for your loved one. And you have it in the back of your head. There's a reminder that you've received a call and you need to get it scheduled so that you can have those annual visits on a regular basis. So it's a little bit of a stressor because it's something that you have to do and it, keeps nagging you if you, especially if you keep getting those reminders, but it's not necessarily causing or translating into chronic stress just yet. Healthy stress is also short term. So I would quantify it by saying you could have stressful periods of a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. But if it prolongs beyond the 2 to 3 week time frame, I would certainly invite you to pause and reevaluate kind of what's happening for you and your family. Healthy stress is also manageable, meaning you have the ability to delegate, you have the ability to prioritize, you have the ability to see the end, right? The end of the tunnel in terms of what you're experiencing right now. Chronic stress, however, it's constant. There's no break at all. It just keeps going. You don't feel as if you can get like some fresh air. If you could imagine being in a pool of water, for example, and like trying to, get up and catch your breath. Chronic stress means that you're feeling as if you can't pause. You may also think about the hamster that's on the wheel, just going, going, going. And you may feel as if you don't keep going, then like the entire world that is important to you may just implode. You may also feel as if you have a number of balls that you're juggling. And you may have heard the analogy of understanding which balls are rubber and which balls are glass, indicating you don't want to drop the glass ones, but the rubber ones you can certainly let drop and they'll bounce. So having chronic stress certainly leads to burnout, where you just simply feel depleted. There's no energy, and you may have been crying out for help, but again, no one's hearing you. Thinking back to our poll, we saw that there were a number of people in the audience who felt as if they're having to do it all with no help, insight at all. Chronic caregiver stress can feel normal, and what that means is we have masked, we've been able to live functionally with this constant level of stress. And I do want to say here that what is considered stressful to you may not necessarily be stress for me. And that's okay. We all navigate our worlds differently. I can remember when I actually was at home with one of our six children, and I was trying my best to do all the things, whether that's keeping up with laundry, making sure that the grocery was done, cooking, cleaning the house, attending to the kids, because we had three at the time. And there were times when I just felt overwhelmed. And so my husband and I, we decided to switch roles where he came out of corporate and came home, and then I went back out. And I can remember feeling um, somewhat of defeat because he was able to run the house without any hesitation. Like I would come home, house was clean, dinner made, kids were at the table doing homework. And I remember, kind of beating myself up for that. Like, what type of mom am I not able to, manage a household? But the reality is we are different. And it's important for us to recognize what our lanes are. And so being okay with who I am as a mother, as a woman, as a person who's trying to navigate all the things and recognizing that's just not my thing. Now, there may be some of you saying, well, Shatanese, I don't really have that option. And I understand. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But my point is embracing your definition of stress and being okay with I can't do that as effectively, or I'm struggling with this. That's also a part of being able to ask for help, making sure that you're not being overly protective, or there's a sense of pride that may be preventing you from getting some help that you may need. Some emotional and psychological impacts. There's anxiety. There's this constant feeling of like, looking out, what's going to happen next. And if I don't do this, if I don't get up early, if I don't stay up late. And so again, it's important to be aware of how your body is actually physically responding. There may be some guilt behind your desire to actually take a break. You may find yourself sitting down, sipping on some tea, and then immediately thinking, oh gosh, there's something else that I need to be doing. I can't actually sit down. There may be a sense of depression and a sense of isolation. And sometimes people don't embrace the word depression because of the connotations, the negative connotations attached to that word. But if you feel as if there's kind of this looming darkness or cloud around you, that can be defined as depression. There may be strained family and personal relationships, primarily because you feel as if others are not stepping up to the plate and helping you out. You may feel as if you shouldn't have to ask for help. You shouldn't have to spell it out in terms of what you need. You may also feel as if it's just easier for you to do it than to try to explain it to someone else. So, all of these show up as impact as it pertains to the stress that we're feeling. Research shows that 40 to 70% of caregivers report symptoms of anxiety or depression due to stress. And that's certainly exacerbated when you are caring for an individual with Down syndrome, primarily because of what our loved one has the ability to do on their own. Something to point out here is let's make sure that we're not limiting our loved one as a result of our own perceived um, limits for them, if that makes any sense. I will share an example now. Again, just as a reminder, Josiah is 10, but prayerfully he's going to keep growing, and I am trying to applaud him for whatever behavior that he's doing versus it has to be done this way. The example I want to offer is Josiah has responsibility for making his bed. Now, I don't profess to be just a master bed maker, but my thought is corner to corner. Like that should be something you can easily handle corner to corner. Um, so when Josiah does make the bed, it's not as smoothed out as I would like. It's not always corner to corner, but he has made the effort. And so I applaud that. I say, yes, that's great. And hopefully as he ages, he'll continue to get better. So I encourage you to ask yourself, are you possibly limiting your loved one out of fear? Are you possibly limiting your loved one because of your own perception of their ability? And so sometimes we can take on more tasks or responsibilities because we feel as if they cannot, when in reality, they can, but maybe not exactly the way that we want it to or the way we believe it should be. Now, I'm not asking you to put your loved one in danger, i.e., driving or things of that nature, but there may be a few tasks that they could actually do if you are able to kind of let that go and release it. And Lake, I see comments coming through the chat. I just want to pause. Are there any immediate questions or things that we're going to wait until the end?
No, we'll just answer all questions at the end.
All right, great. Thank you, Lake. All right, so now let's move into some practical tools for wellness. Breathing exercises. I cannot stress this enough. And as a matter of fact, I invite everyone on the call to just pause for a second and take in the deepest breath that you can take and hold it and then release. One more time, the deepest breath that your lungs can hold. Hold it for just a couple of seconds and then release. We are so busy with going, going, going. Thank goodness our bodies breathe on their own. But in terms of being intentional and sitting and really truly taking some deep breaths, we have to do that on a regular basis. I love the concept of journaling, primarily because it gets it out of your head and onto something external to your body. And even if you're wanting to write out things that you feel are not pleasant, especially if anyone ever came across these thoughts, being able to journal and destroying it afterwards is also something that I recommend whenever I'm working with a client. Just journaling and either burning it, tearing it up, uh, just releasing it. Put it into small pieces like confetti, and then blowing it. There's just something that connects to the way that our nervous system works of us writing things down, then being able to destroy it and release it. You may consider putting it on a balloon and allowing it to be released. You may consider putting it on a stone and throwing it and allowing that to be a form of release. Physical activity. I know with the way our work is set up today, we are working oftentimes at home, or we are in sedentary positions. So being able to set an alarm, whoops, reminding ourselves to get up and move around is definitely important. And research tells us that if we can take a break from looking at a screen and avert our eyes to something outside the window, or actually physically getting up and going outside, that is very helpful. I love music. Music gets me moving. It can set the mood, can certainly cause me to really just recalibrate. I'm currently doing wall Pilates, and so it's not as active as I would like it to be, just because of my own physical limitations. But I feel as if I'm doing something. And I can certainly tell the difference when I'm not doing wall Pilates. I remember being at the Down Syndrome Diagnosis Network Rockin' Moms Retreat, and there was actually a Zumba instructor who actually has Down syndrome. And I can't remember her name, but I'm sure if anyone's interested, we could get that information to you. But I loved it. We're being able to, we were outside. It was blazing hot, but we were still outside and we were being instructed by someone who looks like our loved ones. It was phenomenal. So, setting boundaries, I'm sure you've heard the statement that no, N-O, is a full sentence, and not having regret with saying no. And so, what could those boundaries mean? Those boundaries may mean that you're not, participating in PTA for a month. Those boundaries may mean that you're not taking on an additional project at work for a period of time, not saying indefinitely. Those boundaries may mean that you are not allowing someone to come into your room or into your space until 9 o'clock. And so that way between 7 and 8:30 a.m., that's your private time to either journal, to breathe, to do some type of Pilates or physical exercise. It's important for you to identify what those boundaries are. Make sure you tell the people what those boundaries are, and to be okay with saying no. And it's important to celebrate those small wins. We all have those little wins. And so acknowledging those daily efforts will also help with lifting your spirit. And that may mean you don't necessarily exercise 5 days a week, but hey, you did 2 out of the 5. We're going to celebrate that. It may mean that you didn't say no every single time this week, but you said it 3 times this week. We're going to celebrate that. So, whatever your wins are, I highly encourage you to think about those and celebrate those. So, we've talked about how to recognize burnout. We've talked about a few tips to address it. Now let's talk about moving into that resilience, because the reality is stress is not going to go away. We love our loved one. We want to be there. We want to show up for them. And so the purpose of today is, how can we show up for them and take care of ourselves? So, in terms of resilience, checking in with yourself. I can't stress enough being so mindful of how your body responds to stress. For me, my eye begins to twitch. And as soon as it does that, I ask myself, I try to pause and say, okay, what was the last thought? What was the last conversation? What was the last text message? What is it that happened that now my body is saying, uh-oh, something's not right. There's something going on. The reality is we have internal self-talk that happens on a regular basis, and we don't even realize it. Many of us, we don't even know that that's happening. And so that internal self-talk is happening, playing in the background, and our body begins to respond to it. Thinking about the car analogy, and the check engine light is coming on. So, how do you recognize stress in your body? What does your body do? Sometimes in my neck, it starts to feel really tight. And so I'm, holding it in my neck. And so I've got to make sure that, first of all, I know what's causing it. What can I do to address it? Because sometimes things are outside of our control. And more importantly, what do I need to do to recalibrate myself? And what are we doing to cope with the stress that we feel? Are we eating? Are we just totally checking out? Are we relying on Netflix series? Are we relying on Amazon? There's something to be said for that feeling of excitement every time the doorbell rings and it's an Amazon package. That may be a way of coping. Are we doing other things that may not be positive over a long period of time to ourselves, which then causes our judgment to be clouded? And so only you know what that may be for yourself. And so, I've talked to a number of people who feel as if they can't find positive ways to actually deal with the stress. And so, trying one option for a week is at least an opportunity. It's something that you're exploring, revisiting options that you used to do, whether that may be dancing. Sometimes just going out and being with nature has an opportunity to just kind of ground us. If you can create certain rituals to really help yourself kind of wind down after a full day, or to get prepared for a full day, you'll begin to see the benefits of that. So, for example, for me, in the mornings, I love the morning because the house is not, waking up as often, especially on the weekends. During the school week, getting everybody out of the house, and then I have the house to myself. So it's important for me to be intentional about sitting down, whether I'm checking out my app where I'm reading, various verses or affirmations or scriptures or whatever the case may be, whatever is important to you. Then doing my Pilates, making sure that I'm eating a balanced meal and getting myself ready for the day. I try to also be mindful of, at the end of the day, of any type of uh, vegging out on social media. Some scrolling is okay, but think about whatever you're watching uh, during those last few moments before you close your eyes, and how that sticks with you. And being able to express gratitude. I actually have a gratitude journal, and there's a glass jar that I have in my home where if I have new visitors, there's a card they can write down what they're grateful for. And so we look at those at the end of the year and have an opportunity to just kind of smile about what you're grateful for. And the reason why the gratitude is important is because it can be really challenging to think about just our reality as caregivers. But there's some bright spots in there. There's some times when those milestones are met. There are times when our loved one shows us how grateful they are for us. And so, if we are so focused on what's not going right, we'll miss all of that. And so, it's important for us to have that perspective of gratitude. And so, how do you move from overwhelmed, feeling like you're drowning, to empowered? Focusing on those daily wins, not just everything that you have to do. Even if you schedule some time on Friday at the end of the week, 30 minutes where you get to do something that you enjoy, whether that is picking out a bouquet of flowers that you like, whether that is taking a walk, whether that is actually treating yourself to something that you've been wanting for a long time. Being able to be intentional about what you enjoy helps fuel everything else that you have to do. From silence to community, making sure that you are sharing your story. I can remember early on in our diagnosis journey, I was in so much denial. And as a result of that, I felt isolated. I felt as if I was the only one. But there are a number of communities that are out there. The National Down Syndrome Society has a listing of communities. And once you start getting connected, you will then no longer feel as isolated. Again, recognizing that each of our issues and problems are unique to us. From self-neglect to self-care, definitely prioritizing you taking care of yourself because you want to still be there for all of those wins that your loved one will continue to do. And you want to be your best self, your best physical, active self. And in order to do that, you've got to plant those seeds now for yourself of tomorrow, yourself of 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now. Making sure that you are managing any guilt that you may be experiencing, either from what others are projecting onto you or self imposed. You are not striving for perfection, you're striving for presence. You want to be there. And knowing that your best, when you are operating your best, is still good enough. And then using small, consistent practices to make sure you are working on those muscles every time. And by muscles, I mean changing those coping behaviors, changing those habits that may have contributed to the burnout that you may be feeling. And again, not placing blame or trying to focus on, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, but reaching out and saying, I want to do this and I'm asking for some help. You don't have to do it alone. I've mentioned NDSS throughout our time together. There are other community programs that are available to you either locally or nationally. I even know that there are some international programs that are available. So attempt to tap into your resources. If you may be saying, Shatanese, I don't even know where to begin. Lake put in, Lake and Jessica put in information in the chat, and you can certainly follow up with NDSS afterwards to get some access to other ideas or resources that you may need. You may need to actually speak to a therapist. I'm all for a licensed professional who can hear what I'm saying and possibly divert me or direct me in a different way. There's something about being able to, get it out from someone who has created that space for you to share without judgment, and then you have a plan of action afterwards. And then there are certainly online networks, caregiver.org, other peer groups, as well as social media communities. Reaching out for help is not a weakness by any means. It is something that is a strength, something it's like a superpower for you and for your family. And so do not feel ashamed in any way by asking for help. So, we've talked about scheduling self care and me time. I talk often about how once a month, every Friday, midway through the month, I close down the laptop, which can be frightening for me as a solopreneur, and I go and do something that I want to do. And that has ranged from going to get a massage, going to get a pedicure, going to my local grocery store and picking out flowers, or just taking a nap. It works wonders. It also gives me something to look forward to, and it re energizes me for the rest of the month. Making sure that you have some support. I know that there are many of us who may be in situations where we don't actually have family who are around us. And I encourage you to see if there are other individuals that you could redefine family that may be willing to help you. And I know that that's a personal decision for everyone, but I'm strongly encouraging folks to try to create some type of group, some type of family um, connection. I call them a tribe, where you can tap people to help you when you need to take a break. And making sure that you are in tune with yourself and recognizing those early signs, as well as creating a wellness plan. What are you going to do today? What's one thing that you can do today that will be different for you moving forward? And committing to one act of self care, however you are defining that. Time for a poll as we begin to wind down. Wind down. Which area do you find the hardest to maintain consistently? Scheduling your self care, asking for support, recognizing those burnout signs, or actually sticking to a wellness plan. And so we'll see where our audience is. Lake, hopefully the answers are coming in quickly.
They are, yes. I'll keep it open for a few more seconds, so
Great.
get your answers in.
And I'm hoping people are being honest with themselves. And again, there may have been a comment, why can't I select more than one? Which is your gut answer?
It's slowing down, so I'm gonna end the poll and share the results now.
Okay, drum roll. Wow, 32%. Second place, scheduling self-care, but 39% is following a wellness plan. And I do want to point out, third place, asking for support. So you have an opportunity today to try to make some changes in terms of a wellness plan. And I know that can feel daunting, and you may think, ah, that's one more thing. Just do one thing. Maybe it's infusing more green into your diet. Eat the rainbow is what I say. Asking for support. Maybe it's someone that you've connected with, either at work or in another community organization. Scheduling the self care. Pick up the phone right now and make an appointment for whatever it is that brings life to you, that fills you up. I am compelling you to do at least one thing. And I guarantee that at least doing one thing will help you feel a little bit better about what you're experiencing and how you're looking at everything. Thank you, Lake. So, I'd love to hear how folks do in terms of their one, the commitment that they're doing. Find an accountability partner, someone who will check in on you, someone who really cares about you and who wants to see you and your family succeed, and tell them what you've committed to doing. Hey, I've committed to sticking to a wellness plan. It's going to be a simple plan, but I'm going to stick to it. I've committed to scheduling self care once a month. Maybe you start out with once a quarter. Whatever it is that you can do, please take care of it. Your loved ones will thank you for it. So, in terms of our takeaways, burnout is real. You're not imagining things. You're not, you are what you're feeling. Your body is telling you, yes, it's time to see if we can make some changes. And if you're not quite sure, certainly pause and look at yourself in terms of warning signs. You may even ask those who are closest to you, am I feeling, do you see some patterns in what I'm doing? Remember, there's a healthy versus chronic stress because healthy stress keeps us kind of doing things. And daily habits, little things will certainly help with strengthening that muscle towards resilience. Having a group of people around you, however you're defining who those people are, it matters. You would be surprised. There may be people that will say, I was waiting for you to ask. I didn't want to impose because I didn't want you to feel as if I was attacking you in any way or thinking that you couldn't do it. But thank you for asking. And you don't have to turn over everything. Maybe it's a small thing that you can delegate to them. And self-care. So again, I want to stress being able to take care of yourself is definitely important. And so now we will open it up for questions. And so, Lake, let me know.
Yes, thank you. We encourage you to submit your questions using the Q&A feature. We have a couple come through, so let me go through those now. We had a question that talked about maybe feeling worry about feeling judged when sharing some of these struggles. Do you have any advice on how to kind of get past that fear of judgment?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I appreciate your vulnerability. It's certainly important to kind of use discernment in terms of being able to share. The reality is, if someone is judging you based off of you being authentic and sharing your true sense of what's happening, that's their issue and not yours. And so, if that person does judge for whatever reason that they have going on, that's a data point, that's information. And so you can then, at least you know where that person is. So, in a sense, you can thank them for letting them know where they are. But I want you to not be discouraged by one person's response or even multiple people's responses. There are communities and other people who will create that space for you to share what you need to share, when you need to share it, and to get the help that you need. So if someone is judging, those are possibly not the people for you, and that's okay. That's absolutely okay. So, Lake, any other question?
Yeah, we have another question I think is on similar lines about this idea asking for support. And how do we find people to ask for support? It can sometimes be challenging in finding whether it's friends or other chosen family. What happens if they don't choose you back and they're not able to provide the support you're asking for? If you have any tips on that.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I can hear the vulnerability in that question, and I appreciate that. And I recognize, as I share in terms of my own personal journey, I recognize that by me having a sense of kind of denial about who Josiah is, that prevented me from being able to connect with people. First and foremost, I would encourage that person to connect with the National Down Syndrome Society to see if there are organizations that are perhaps in their area. That's exactly what I did. And that's how I found out the Down Syndrome Diagnosis Network. That's how I found out about the Atlanta Down Syndrome organization. So there are also Facebook groups, and I know that some groups have moved from Facebook into specific apps. And so just asking at least one organization where you know they get it, they should be able to connect you and get you, pointed in the right direction. And for those family members who just may not have the capacity, that may be the reality. They just don't have the capacity to help the way that you need them to help. I just believe that we have people in this world who will show up when we send out the all call stating, I just need some help. I believe that those people will come. And it may be from a resource that we hadn't considered. So we just have to be mindful of not automatically closing off from people or organizations that we weren't expecting to step up. So my hope is that person that shared that question, that they were able to connect with some well-known organizations first and foremost, who can then possibly get them connected more wider spread. The last thing I'll say, Lake, is I'm a woman of faith, and my pastor often says that an answer to a problem is a person. An answer to a problem is a person. And so sometimes we just need to be verbal about the help that we need.
I really like that. Um, yeah, I think that's a great thing to remind ourselves of. We have time for one more question. We got this question. Someone asked, when you're already tired, how do you kind of find the strength or energy to do these things that you're recommending? I feel like I've heard this question before of we're already doing so much, and yet now maybe people feel like they have to do even more to feel better. So, do you have like a recommendation of what's a good starting point if we're already feeling tired?
Yeah, I love that question as well. Um, I think first and foremost, just resting, maybe even resting a little more. I'm a big proponent of naps throughout the day. And so oftentimes when our body gets more rest, or it gets a sufficient amount of rest, we have a little bit more clarity in terms of where we can start. My hope is that person today maybe wrote down a couple of things that really resonated with them. And out of those couple of things, which one could be considered a quick win? Meaning, as you shared the question, Lake, I thought about the person just lying flat out on the ground or flat out on their floor in their room, in their home. And so as they extend their arms, of the options, which one could they grab, the fastest? Which one is closest to them? So that may mean that they're already feeling depleted. They just simply go outside and just sit in nature and allow the sun, listen to the trees, just sitting. That may be the first step. And that may be considered an easy one. It may be picking up the phone and actually talking to one of the support groups. That may be the quick win. So out of all of the options, what is the fastest thing? Because we want to do things that immediately fill us up. So find a quick win. And it may just be taking a nap. Yeah.
Shatanese, and thank you for answering all these questions. If we did not get to your question, please email us at health@ndss.org. We're happy to connect you to any of the resources Shatanese mentioned. Thank you all so much for coming. Just a quick reminder, when the webinar ends, you'll get a survey. We love to hear your feedback so we can constantly work on improving these webinars for you. So please share your feedback. And that is all for today. Thank you so much for attending.